So I am joined today by Lazarus, a PHP developer who got in touch with me about a new HTMX themed site that he's building. So welcome to the show.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you very much for taking the time to talk. So before we get into the site, what's your sort of background with HTMX and your web development in general?
Yeah. I'm primarily a PHP and Laravel developer now. I have my own company of one or two, depending on kind of how you count it. But I've been around a while, work a bunch of different jobs in kind of different industries before I sort of started, going all in on Laravel.
Interesting. So what sorts of industries?
Well, I worked at a big medical software company right out of college, and this was like a big 5,000 person company. And then I
Yeah.
worked as a legislative aide, so not programming at all. I kind of had caught the politics bug.
Oh, funny. So not, nothing to do with software and development.
No, no, just a staffer like at the State House in Massachusetts.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I was working there and started building stuff on the web on my own, sort of for the job, sort of just to make my life easier.
Yeah,
Um,
so like little online tools and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, I was involved in the sort of community stuff, so I built this like community event scraper. Scraping stuff is always fun. It feels like magic sometimes when you can kind of like pull that all together. And I did some calendar scheduling tools. And then like just to keep track of all the stuff that was happening, in the office that was there, I built some note taking and contact management stuff. And that actually ended up, turning into after I left that kind of its own project.
Interesting. So that's kind of an interesting job.
But yeah, I mean, I was having a lot of fun, doing web programming stuff, kind of on the side. And I started to think about, going back to it professionally. And I found a company that was building tools for legislators. That worked out really nicely.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a really smooth transition.
Exactly. And, in some of the ways that has been my niche, like I've kind of taken what I've done, and for the last 10 or I don't know, dozen years or whatever it's been since then, I do a lot of stuff kind of involving legislators and elected officials now.
Interesting. So the sort of time you spent as a non-programming job kind of set the path for the rest of your programming career.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of really a superpower when if you, as a developer, or with sort of the knowledge that you have as a developer, if you go into an industry that doesn't see a lot of other developers going into it, if you actually work in that industry, you'll see you are forced to use those tools that they used, and it's sort of these ancient tools, and I think it kind of really sparks a lot of ideas, a lot of the really best ideas, a lot of profitable ideas, sort of come from the creativity and opportunity that you have if you're sort of a traditional non-dev environment and you bring that development mindset and those skills into it. I think wherever you end up working, it's kind of a really positive thing. And you find like people basically in the rest of the world, outside of the development world, for the most part, are using spreadsheets to keep track of everything.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I mean, I've said the same thing. It's really true though. I mean, they're fine for so many things, but I feel like they're also a sign of an opportunity, at that business or in that industry if everybody's using it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, spreadsheets are great. I'm not trying to like downplay how good spreadsheets are because I use them all the time for stuff too. Especially now that you can like share them. They have like these Google Doc spreadsheets where it's like you have a single one and everybody's working on it. And it used to be like you're emailing some spreadsheet around, or you've got some shared server and you download your copy. But yeah, I mean they're very good, but you hit a limit at some point and they start to get really messy. So like if you're the person whose job it is to track that stuff all down and, make sense of it and use these spreadsheets, like what an advantage, you have as a developer to be able to kind of build your own tools.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I built legislative tools for a small company that was in Boston. But yeah, I got laid off pretty suddenly,
Oh
and that
man.
was kind of a real jolt.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I think developers usually know like there's other options if you get laid off. Most people feel like pretty secure. But it can be, I would say it can be really scary to be laid off. I had just had my first kid
Oh
a
man.
couple months before that. So, and just to like make an additional little bit of like fear came into it. I remember I had an offer at the time. The day I was laid off, we had like a couple days before that, my wife and I had put in an offer on a house,
Oh
so
man, that's definitely scary.
yeah, it was, but it ended up so being laid off, like it ended up being, I would say, one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow.
And I think this is not sort of an unheard of situation. When people get time from being laid off, sometimes that can be really good. But basically, I had a few months of severance pay. And then I had a few months more of unemployment coverage. And during those months, I just kind of made some decisions.
Hmm.
Number one, that I'm going to learn Laravel. Um,
Wow.
and number two, that I'm going to start my own company.
Okay. So you just took that time to just like learn Laravel forwards and backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I had thought about doing it for, a bunch of years. Like I was working on PHP projects, so it made sense. But I
Yep.
didn't trust. I'm used to kind of building my own stuff, and like you get this fear, I think, with frameworks where you're like, can this do what I need it to do? What if I reach a point where the framework doesn't have it, right? And so if that happens, am I just screwed because I've gone so deep, the framework can't do it. That means I can't do it. And I just never
Right.
really, I was scared of that. And I shouldn't have been. Laravel can do whatever you need to do. And then if you need to just go straight PHP and fill in the back, like fill in your own stuff, you can totally do that. So I was working for a small company. They didn't have a lot. And it's just really hard to justify taking that time to go deep and do experiments and do that kind of like deep learning you need to learn something like Laravel.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like what a good use of time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it paid off right away too. Like one of my first clients, maybe even one of my first clients was my old boss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, he hired me back for more money and more freedom. So, I count that as a
He
win.
found out it's not always that easy to lay off devs as they think it's going to be.
No, I mean, there's like an institutional knowledge that can be really hard to replace. But, I mean, ultimately, there are a lot of smart developers. So I don't feel like it's like I'm not someone who thinks, oh, no one could ever lay me off. It's like people
Yeah.
can figure out the stuff that I've figured out, especially like I'm trying to make it simple and stuff. So,
Right.
you can always be replaced. Like I don't want anyone to think they can't be replaced. But,
Right.
anyway, I mean, that's just kind of a long way to say that I've been running my own web development company using Laravel for about 10 years now. I work with clients. I have built my own products that I now sell directly to customers, legislative customers, other ones.
Interesting. That's great. So, I mean, the site that you're setting up now.
Yeah, so the site is called hypecp.com. And the big picture for it is sort of right in the name, right? So hype
Yep.
is for hypermedia,
Okay.
and the CP, as most people who've used the terminal will recognize, CP is for copy and paste.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. So
Yeah,
hyper media hype CP copy paste.
yeah, and that's really the whole of it. I mean, at least for now. I've been really getting into building things with HTMX and embracing HTML, and it's sort of I can't really stress enough how much it's changed my sort of day-to-day development and my day-to-day work. I mean, really, it's like, now
Hmm.
when I go into do a project, it's like I just throw this one single CDN up at the top of my project, and it doesn't matter how old, it might be brand new, it might be from 2004, and I'm building these really,
Right.
fancy things, and I'm building them in exactly the same way, regardless of which project it's part of. It's like I put this thing at the top, I'm building with HTMX, I'm sort of, just kind of learning those individual pieces and putting attributes in and stuff like that. And it's just kind of really easy to incorporate in lots of different ways, regardless of what my tech stack is.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've said it on this podcast many times, but that's really my experience too, especially with these kind of legacy systems. The fact that HTMX is pretty much compatible with, any other backend makes it really just kind of easy to
Yeah.
incorporate anywhere.
I mean, but one of the things that I still struggle with, and the reason I'm kind of, the reason I'm starting this Hype CP site is one of the things I struggle with even this past year of using HTMX is kind of sorting out some of the different attributes, what they do, how to use them, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of attributes.
yeah, and they give you a lot of power to work with, but honestly, it's hard to keep track of them sometimes. It's hard to always remember the syntax.
Right. I mean, it's basically a language of its own. These libraries, you just have to get used to it over time.
Yeah, so what I think that's true, but what I wish there was, and that the reason for this, I wish there was a site I could go to and, find all the attributes in one place and just see a working example of that.
Yep. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like the HTMX site is like the docs and stuff. The actual HTMX site is really good, and it does have some examples. And it has actually much more than that, which is great. It has like the in-depth knowledge. It's got the essays. It's got, like I said, some examples, but it's more of like a reference site and kind of I feel like that's sort
Hmm.
of the deep learning site where you sort of you learn the theory and you see some stuff, but they have to cover a lot. They have to do more. I don't want to do that. I don't want to recreate the HTMX docs. They did a great job. I use it all the time because the pages are simple. They've got some very basic stuff. I think of HypeCP as a little bit of extra like show. If we could have a show and tell, the show part, which is just like these are examples. They are working right now. Like you don't have to, do anything different to, you don't have to change things.
Yeah.
You can just go there and you can find any attribute you want to and just, see it working right there in front of you before you then just copy and paste it.
Yeah. Although, wait, so you just said that this is something you want to build, so it doesn't exist right now?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a lot of it planned, in my head. But yeah, no, I mean, this is something it's not built yet. It's really just in the early phases. I have a lot of the concept and the layout and, just some of the big picture stuff in my head.
Okay, so people are not going to be able to just check it out for themselves after this episode.
Yeah, well, I did put up kind of a landing page for it. I've been hoping to get some feedback. I think one of the main reasons that I sort of reached out and wanted to talk on the podcast, my plan is basically to build it entirely in public and have people kind of follow along. And the journey of building something, I always found that fascinating. And my hope is that people will also find it fascinating and kind of follow, even offer suggestions along the way. And if I can set it up right, hopefully people can even kind of contribute to it themselves.
Interesting. I mean, so I will say it does sound kind of similar to a project I've been working on. But you said it's kind of
Yeah.
mostly copy and paste examples. And I'm trying to picture, like, what does it look like in your head right now? Like, if you had to kind of take a snapshot and try to paint a picture as you see it right now, what does it look like?
Yeah. So let me think for a second. Um, as I see it right now, it's basically a single page. But I mean, it's like a single huge page, right?
Okay. Well, what do you mean huge?
Well, so one of the things about HTMX, and one of the reasons that I first got excited about it was just like how much you can put on a page at once, right? I mean, with just raw HTML, you can put like hundreds and hundreds of pages of text into the browser, and the browser just does not care. Like the
Right.
browser doesn't it doesn't freeze, it just prints it and moves on. And HTMX was kind of unique in these JavaScript libraries, because when you include HTMX into the project, it basically renders it exactly the same as it renders HTML. So even like Alpine and Livewire and some of these other lightweight ones, Vue is sort of lightweight. They don't necessarily try to take over your whole project in the way that Next and React do, but they still can't handle that amount of content. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've had the same experience, and I think it's because it's not building its own virtual DOM, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, HTMX, it doesn't need to have the whole DOM converted into JavaScript objects and hydrated or rehydrated and all that jazz. So it's
Yeah.
just fast, efficient, and basically in the same way that HTML is. And this goes for processing the requests. So all these examples, on the page, I want to make them live, and they're all going to work. Like they can process their own request, update the DOM. And so this site, that has all this stuff on it should be just like one huge page. And I want it to kind of be a showcase, like a demonstration of what I think of is one of the power of HTMX, that it's really tapping into the power of HTML and the fact that the browsers are so good at this. So I think, honestly, it's I almost hesitate to use the word, but it's like it's a flex, like here is something. This page, this hype CP is something you literally cannot do with any other JavaScript front end framework. It's like
Interesting. Yeah.
it could not display this amount of information. It would freeze. It would have like this, you know, just a pause at the, when the page first loads, and it would be loading things in the background. And so we're talking like,
Yeah.
I don't know how many examples we're going to be at. We'll just have to see how it goes. Maybe I'm exaggerating how many I'll be able to get in there, because
Right.
it's just a matter of time and stuff like that. But let's say there's like 500 live working examples all on the same page all at once, and it's all lightning fast. I mean,
Okay.
that's the sort of flex. That's the idea of it.
All right. So you've got hundreds of live examples. I mean, it sounds like it maybe has potential to get a little bit unwieldy, like with that much info at once.
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely could be. I mean that's going to be part of the big experiment, right? Like it's a challenge. I'm going to have to figure out sort of a reasonable navigation system and ways to get what you want. I think like users are not exactly used to, browsing the web where you come across a page where there's that much content. Maybe, there's a lot
Hmm.
people. I think there's a certain
Interesting.
group of people who are used to a lot of information on the page and really appreciate it. So I do think there's a contingent out there. Maybe there's a chance that the reason people on the web, the expectation is that there's not a lot of data. Maybe that's because the frameworks that are most common, kind of just can't do it.
Okay, so it's like less that users don't like it than that there's sort of SPA sites just couldn't do it. That's kind of that's a funny idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, this is just, I'm just thinking of it now, but I mean, people can deal with big pages of data. Like, I mean, I know I certainly can, but I don't think I'm
Yeah.
alone in that. Like, all these hacks and all these workarounds for the sake of the virtual DOM, like infinite scrolling, pagination, like they're definitely necessary sometimes. Like, you don't want to see a full database of stuff all the time,
Right.
but the amount of times that they're not necessary, but they're used anyway. Like they're not always necessary, right? Like
Yeah.
pagination and you've got 100 items total and you have to page through 10 pages and you can't search any of them. I just like, I mean, it's annoying sometimes, right? Like,
Right.
just show me the data that I want to see. Like, just,
Yeah, no, I get it. I
yeah,
get
I mean,
it.
like, I love using, Command F, right? Like, it's so much faster than the page might give you a little search bar or something like that. And you can type and find something, but like, who knows where that search bar is going, what it has indexed, where it's going to take you. So like I don't want to deal with any of that. Like this, Hype CP is going to be just one gigantic page, hundreds of live examples, a short description of each one, and then like code samples that you can just one click, boom, like they'll have a little icon for like copy, or it'll say copy, and then you click it, copies to your clipboard, you paste it into your projects.
Wow. Ah, okay, that makes sense. So you've got
Yeah.
this one giant page. It's still fast.
Yep.
People are command effing their way through it, around it, clicking
Hopefully.
examples, and just like copy paste into
Yeah,
your
exactly.
project.
Exactly.
Wow. I mean, I would definitely use it. And you mentioned that people would be able to potentially contribute. So is this going to be like an open source repo, and you'll kind of manage the pull requests for it?
Yes. So I'm still working that out. Um, I've never really been entirely comfortable with the sort of GitHub open source pull request setup and the issues tab and the pull request tab. I don't know. Um, and
Hmm.
I just open source is just I love open source. I use everything all the time
Yeah,
open source. I
same.
love it, but I've just never really been a contributor. Um, Maybe this is just my own laziness, but I
Yeah.
want people like me who haven't gotten deep in that to be able to contribute to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really used those fully, and when I've had to work on big projects and do pull request management and approvals, it's just not very fun for me.
Got it. So you may just build this one on your own without using that sort of open source setup.
Well, okay, so no, like it's not that I do want people to let people contribute. Like that's part of, the goal is to make this a collaborative project in some ways. Like this is going to be my project,
Okay.
my vision, that kind of thing. But like I like the idea of a kind of community place where people can contribute. So, basically what I'm thinking is like people submit, there's going to be a form on the HypeCP site and they submit through a form these sort of one-off examples, and then I can review and like disapprove or approve them, modify them, edit them, whatever I want, right?
Okay. So well, this is like so you're doing like your own little mini pull requests.
I mean, I hope not. I
Okay.
guess like, but I feel like it's not really even that complicated. Like they don't need to know they don't need to know any of the code of the site. I don't want to do any pull requests where they pull in all this extra code. All they
Okay.
need to know is, how to make a little HTML snippet using HTMX tags and attributes, right? And that's it. So like no other tools, nothing else necessary, no GitHub account, no like plus and minus lines of code, no making sure that everything compiles. Like I just look at it and decide, oh, is this good? Is this a good little snippet that people might like? Okay, good. Then it goes up. And for people who are submitting, there's just absolutely nothing to figure out.
Okay. So they just like you want to make the process as easy as possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I've never contributed anything to any open source project, and it's a bit of a shame, in my mind. One of my goals that I do hope to get through. But I mean, if it were as easy as just having an idea and trying to typing it into a form on a site, then I probably would have done it. And that's
Yep.
what I'm sort of hoping that people will do. And I just want to make it easy for them.
Nice. That makes sense.
And I mean, also like I'll give them credit. Like I'll give them like public credit. So sometimes it's kind of gets lost. Who did what on a big open source project.
Hmm.
And I think there's an opportunity here. Here's what I sort of imagine. It's like we've got this page of examples, and I've made
Yep.
most of them. But every time we get and I approve a submission, I'll also put a little, submitted by, some name, Twitter handle, whatever. And then maybe some of the examples, like I build an example, have variations. And so
Hmm.
they could have a button on the site and you come to the example and there's add a variation. And somebody comes along, they see some cool way to slightly modify my example
Yeah.
or just make it better. My examples are not the be all end all. So they find a way to make it better, they submit it, and it gets linked to the example that I put. And then, then you've got, so along with all this huge list of examples, you've got these variations too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that almost sounds like, that's cool. That almost sounds like what you'd see on Stack Overflow, where sometimes like, the best code snippet is like several comments down, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess I hadn't really thought of it like that, but I think you're right. Like everyone has their own way of coding stuff, and you would see sometimes somebody adding a little extra flair or a little extra detail in the comments on Stack Overflow. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. I would want them to sort of be able to just throw their own stuff into the pool, and then I can organize it, showcase it. I mean, that's really the big idea of HypeCP.
Very cool. I mean, that actually sounds very fun.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like people have fun in a lot of different ways. But this is my kind of fun, at least.
Yeah. Well, so can I say one thing? Have you
Yeah,
heard this show very much before?
yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I really enjoy it. I would say at this point that I've heard almost every episode.
Okay. Wow. Nice.
Yeah, and nice job on the podcast, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I appreciate that. But I mean,
Yeah.
just a few weeks ago, like I announced something called htmxlabs.com, right? Do you remember that episode?
Oh, definitely.
So, I mean, I know people sort of come to ideas in different ways, and everyone has their own path and their own take on stuff. But I mean, your vision and your description for HypeCP, it sounds a lot like the way I've been thinking of building HTMX Labs.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I mean, was this sort of inspired by the HTMX Labs episode and site?
Well, I mean, it is the HTMX Lab site.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite following.
I mean, HypeCP, like that's just hypecp.com. That's just the new name for htmxlabs.com. That's the new name for the site.
Okay, but I mean, the HTMX Labs is my site.
Yeah. And so is HypeCP, right? It's your site. You just decided to change the name.
Okay. I'm just like, I'm sorry. I'm very confused right now. I have HTMX Labs. You have HypeCP, but you're saying they're the same site.
I'm saying that HTMX Labs is turning into HypeCP, and yes, that they are the same site, and that they're both mine,
Okay.
and that they're both yours. You decided to rebrand HTMX Labs into HypeCP, and that's why we're here now to sort of announce that change in the name and kind of like go a little bit in depth on the project.
Okay. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I mean, today, this is the first time I'm hearing about HypeCP.
Well, I mean, not really. So, like, you've actually been talking about it for like 30 minutes. Like, HypeCP is your project and your idea, and it's your site.
No, I mean, this is your idea. You were presenting it.
Yes, okay. It's my idea, but I am you.
What do you mean?
I mean, I am literally you. Like, we are the same person. I mean, like, same name, same story, same background, same headphones, like same shirt. Like we are literally the same person.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. We are definitely not the same person. Like I'm talking here, you're there. right? I mean,
Like, just like trying to figure out how to describe this, but like, take a look at your desk, at my desk.
okay.
Take a look at your desk, right?
Yeah. I see my
Okay,
desk.
so you'll see on your desk there's a Rode mic.
Yeah,
You've got
okay.
a Simpsons calendar, right?
Yes.
You have a
What
mug
the
with some
fuck?
green matcha tea, exactly the same as I do, right? Same mug.
Okay. Yeah. I that's just, I'm sorry. This is really really weird right now.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely weird. But I promise, like, I am you and you are me. So, okay, here, watch. You have that black hat on, right?
Yeah.
So watch this. Watch this.
Oh my god. Oh my god. What the what the fuck? Hello? What the